Other interesting political news, you have the UAW reaches a tentative strike with Ford Motor Company. Now, it looks like this is thanks to a LinkedIn article. It says the United Auto Workers Union has announced a tentative contract agreement with Ford, and this is in the 6th week of the historic strike against the Detroit Big Three. The Big Three being Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. Though Chrysler went so bankrupt so bad in 2009, thanks in part to the unions, that they're bought out by European-owned company Fiat, which then later rebranded to a new holding company by name of Stellantis, or Stellantis, if you feel so inclined to have a little bit of a fun accent in there. So the Big Three, which used to dominate the global automotive community, they're still a Big Three, but I'd say they're not as big. Now, it is historical. It's the first time, I believe, in 80 years where there are 3 strikes at once. So every single one of the UAW Big Three were on strike simultaneously. Now, according to a post on LinkedIn, the UAW deals include, but not limited to, a 25% general wage increase over the course of the contract agreement and a 68% bump in starting wages. Of course, UAW president, who makes $350,000 per year, Shawn Fain, and wears, ironically, a t-shirt that says "Eat the Rich," this person said he called it a major victory. Now, to be clear, again, this might be, depending on when I finish editing, this might already be solidified, but with the data we currently have now, and against a fluid situation, they note that the agreement must be ratified by a majority of the members employed by Ford. Meanwhile, the union is still negotiating with General Motors and Stellantis, where 5,000 and 7,000 workers, respectively, expanded the strikes just last week. Now, the UAW also said they were working on closing a deal with General Motors. So it looks like they're getting darn near close, and they have to, of course, officially ratify it. But I can't imagine, in terms of being globally competitive, that is... I would love to know the additional details of the contract. Well, of course, once it's finalized, we'll know the additional benefits. But just alone, a 68% increase in starting wages, when, again, the labor costs for the Big Three are already the greatest in the automotive community. Tesla, which makes, I would say, a short-term more reliable product, and in terms of the global, or the, some people want EVs, they're dominating the EV market. That's a pretty uncontroversial statement. But their labor cost is much less, partially because they don't have the union, and because they incentivize their employees with stock options, which, again, I think if the union, I think that'd be a great middle ground to meet in terms of something people would value, but that also mean you have to work hard or harder, and you have to be really dedicated to having the company be more successful, whereas some people just want to get paid more based on tenure. Kind of different mindset, which I'd also argue, I think the Tesla mindset is much more aggressive in terms of, as cliche as it sounds, making a dent in the universe and really hustling, as the youth might say. But I'm actually pretty surprised. Given how long the strike has been going with Ford, I thought I was debating how many more plants the UAW would kneecap by doing partial strikes, or instead of shutting down the whole plant, they just pay a couple of union members to leave. And again, a big blind spot in terms of tactics by the Big Three rather, is apparently not cross-training employees, so that if they have a strike where, let's say in Ford, particular use case, the Bronco plant, they had the UAW members walk off, I believe, the final assembly and the paint departments of that particular plant. Well, without those departments, or those parts of the factory working, well, you can't finish the vehicle. So they basically had to shut down the whole plant because of that. And in terms of political moves on chessboard, it's a brilliant move by the UAW, because every time the union members are not working and they're paying them to strike, that's costing the UAW $500 per week, which adds up in the aggregate. But instead of having to pay everyone for striking, well, just a couple of people pull them off the assembly line and basically kneecaps the whole plant. So it was a good political move by Shawn Fain, the UAW president. But it'll be interesting to see, again, 68% bump in starting wages and 25% general wage increase over the course of the agreement. Again, it's a 4-year contract. When was the last time in your career you've ever had a 25% increase over 4 years? Again, this is a very competitive industry, and it's a pivotal moment where these companies are going to EVs. Partially and ironically because the government is pushing and forcing them to. And I say it's ironic because the UAW gets these politicians elected. The politicians want the companies to make a less profitable, short-term, less profitable product, and a product that will need less labor from the UAW, as these companies will transition to basically being tech companies, which, again, is a huge new challenge. The Big Three, Ford, GM, Chrysler, they built their brand on making bulletproof, reputation of reliability is not as good as it used to be, but they make great internal combustion engines, especially the V8. I mean, that's what built Detroit, as well as having stick shifts mounted to every one of them. I think that should, I'm not saying it should be a law, perhaps an executive order, for every vehicle to have that mandated. It should be in a stick shift, because then the driver gets the real experience of the vehicle. They're forced to pay attention. You can't have your 72-ounce big gulp corn syrup drink from the local convenience store and a donut and, texting at the same time. You have to be a part of the experience. But I partially digress. Let me know in the comments, with this current most likely contract, will this make Ford so uncompetitive and you have to increase the prices of their already expensive vehicles, so much so they're starting to decrease their market share even more? And will it kneecap them to the point where they just miss out on the EV transition completely? They can't make the transition because they don't have the resources to actually reinvest in the company. It'll be interesting to see. Perhaps they're in the background, Ford Corporate is going to ramp up their robot production, and it's another competitive value that Tesla is going to kill it, as the youth might say. Well, they're actually working on making autonomous robots, or robots that look very similar to people, humanoid robots, whatever term you like, to increase the efficiencies of their plants, their production as well. So it'll be interesting to see. But again, it's a very friction relationship between labor, or rather the union, and the big three. And again, in terms of a long-term successful business, that's why I personally think the best model is usually between just having a relationship where you don't have a union, where you can just negotiate with the person, because kind of like a divorce attorney, that third person has a huge incentive to cause conflict. And just ask anyone who's gone through a divorce. So it'll be interesting to see, again, as the American manufacturing is struggling, you have the big three, which used to dominate the auto industry, becoming more and more struggling with the global competition, as well as Tesla. So it'll be interesting to see, but as I always say, time shall tell. Thank you again for taking the time to tune in. I know we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of October, so you click that button, I greatly appreciate it. I know it's a tall order with such little time left, but a wise pilot once told me, never tell me the odds. Also, please take the time to comment as a video. It'll help it get shared more with the YouTube algorithm, how it magically works sometimes. And the feedback is greatly appreciated, even if it's critical, because I want to make the show better and better. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.